APC gives EFCC, ICPC 72 hours ultimatum to arrest PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar. Weeks before the general election in Nigeria, gunmen attack INEC office in Enugu State. Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi speaks at Chatham House, vows to tackle Nigeria's economic crisis. Also tonight on Politics HQ, Senegal road accident kills 19, wounds 24. Ghana extends domestic debt exchange deadline for a third time. Welcome to Politics HQ. Tonight I'm Sulaiman Aldeh and also Ajuri Ngelale, SSA to the President on Public Affairs and Assistant Principal Spokesperson, Tinubu-Shettima Presidential Campaign Organization, and African farmer Mogaji convener Feed Nigeria Now will be speaking with me on the show. Stay with us. I'll be back. While the ruling All Progressives Congress is taking its renewed hope mantra around the country, still fighting the other sides of its strength in a largely disappointed population and endless questions about the capacity of its candidate to deliver renewed hope to Nigerians, the APC has not stopped touring and taking its message to every part of Nigeria. Dubbed Africa's biggest election in 2023, the Nigerian electorates look forward to the February polls and hope that it is as clean, free, fair, and credible as the president has promised. Against the APC's continuity in power are its fiercest opposition, the PDP, and the growing army of youthful supporters of the Labour Party. The new Nigeria People's Party also says it will be dangerous to underrate its candidate. In that four-horse race, we have stallions willing to participate in a race that will shape Nigeria's future. Also, on the show today, we'll be looking at the manifestos of the presidential candidates on one of the least spoken about areas of Nigeria's problems, food insecurity. Do they have it, and how well have they been speaking about this? How do the respective candidates plan to make Nigerians feed and feed well? An expert and an experienced food security advocate will break this down. But first, Ajuri Ngelale joins me live. Ajuri, good to see you, and thanks for your time as always. Quite a number of things happening. But first, let's start with the freshest of them all. Your party has just spoken not too long from now. Give us a breakdown of that press release, which Nigerians are still trying to dissect.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Sulaiman, and my warm regards to you. Good evening, and good evening to our esteemed viewers. Well, I would say that today's World Press Conference held at the presidential campaign headquarters in Abuja was quite clear and concise in its statement. We had the four media directorates of the campaign all coming together to sign off on a statement that essentially, as you rightly alluded to in your introduction, essentially has asked all relevant agencies of government to look into, investigate, and come to a rightful conclusion on the very grievous allegations being leveled against His Excellency, the former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. We have seen a scenario in which allegations that did not have any evidence backing them against our principal, against His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, dominated the airwaves on almost every station and newspaper in the country. You were seeing headlines around some of these allegations that were totally unsubstantiated in terms of the involvement of our candidate, the allegations of crimes and misconduct, etc., which have not been found accurate and found verifiable by any court of competent jurisdiction. And now we have a situation in which another major candidate of the opposition, PDP, is now faced with allegations that are backed with evidence, where you have voice recordings of the candidate himself explaining how, in quite detailed terms, how as a former vice president when he was in office, he colluded with former President Olusegun Obasanjo to defraud the nation through what he called special purpose vehicles. This was a clear and obvious breach of extant law. And so we're simply asking the security agency, the relevant investigative agencies and bodies to investigate and to come to the rightful conclusion according to the laws of the land. So that's what that is. And I think today, not only did we release that statement, but we clearly laid out in specific terms what laws were broken. We clearly laid out in specific terms by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Festus Keyamo, who happens to be the chief spokesperson of the Public Affairs Directorate, why it is our campaign believes that the media cannot afford to turn a blind eye to issues surrounding other candidates, but then pay close attention when our candidate is the issue.
Well, I think your party has said that much about specifically about the expose as it's now known about of Mike Achimogwu. We're hoping that the PDP will also speak and give its own side of that story. We'll await the PDP. But again, your candidate has been going round, and I wanted us to actually make sense of some of the allegations. For instance, that this talk about soaked bread, which some have taken to mean some kind of hate or some insult to people of Nigeria's southeast region. Let us in on how that campaign and how that statement came about.
Yes, thank you very much, Sulaiman. So as you rightly noted, we've seen quite a bit of spin in some segments of the press around the statement made by His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu in Enugu during a campaign rally in which he essentially was telling the people, Nigerians of Southeastern extraction at the rally, that they should beware of who they vote for so that they don't essentially get what he called soaked sliced bread. How it has been spun, however, in the media is to say that he was essentially, they've kind of framed it as a threat, that they allege that he threatened the people of the Southeast by saying that if in some way that if they do not vote for him, that if he is elected, he will quote unquote deal with them. That's how it's being framed. Now, I want to be clear in what our candidate said, because he was very clear in what he was saying if you remove the spin from it. Essentially, what he was saying is that from 1999 to 2015, you have a very clear voting record within the Southeastern geopolitical zone of approximately 85 to 95% of votes from the region going to the People's Democratic Party. And look, it is their absolute right to vote the way they please. And that has been the collective decision of that region for the 16 years that started the Fourth Republic. And what we have said is that during that 16-year period, you received nothing in the form of social investment programs, which did not exist before 2015, before President Muhammadu Buhari took office. You received nothing in terms of infrastructural provision. The much talked about Second Niger Bridge, 40 years of neglect, 40 years of calling for this Second Niger Bridge. It was ironically President Muhammadu Buhari who enjoyed less than 10% of the votes from the region that made that 300 billion naira investment. It was President Muhammadu Buhari that has built the Akanu Ibiam International Airport in Enugu. It is President Muhammadu Buhari that built the mausoleum for the late great Nnamdi Azikiwe, for example, and several other interventions, Enugu Port Harcourt Expressway, Aba Port Harcourt Expressway, Onitsha Enugu Expressway, and so many others under this administration. So what His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu was saying was he was telling the people of the Southeast that if you want a continuation of the deficit and neglect that was brought by that party that you voted for consecutively over the course of those 16 years, then vote again for that party and you will get soaked sliced bread. But if you vote for us, who did all of the party that did all of what the All Progressives Congress has done in that region without the votes, how much more then would you expect if you're now heavily supporting the party moving forward? And again, that's not even to include the political dimension, which is that for 16 consecutive years, the Southeastern geopolitical zone had devoted, like I said, 85 to 95% of its votes, particularly in presidential elections, to the PDP. And then, of course, they never thought it necessary or right to accord the Southeastern geopolitical zone with the presidential ticket of that party. In fact, the Labour Party today, that's the candidate of the Labour Party today, Peter Obi, his departure from the PDP and entry into the Labour Party is a direct result of the intransigence of the PDP and the neglect and political, abandonment of the PDP of southeastern politicians. He knew he wasn't going to have a chance.
So let me jump in here now. Now it's my time to jump in quickly here. Having said all of that, now let's start talking about some of the key issues around the campaign. Now you've just talked about the Labour Party, talked about Peter Obiano's movement. Love him or hate him, they have a movement. And for your party, they were in Enugu, another place where Peter Obi is said to have a huge following. So what's the conversation like when you talk about a renewed hope? When your candidate spoke, apart from the analogy of soaked sliced bread, what other message did he pass to the people, specifically on the day?
Well, I think the core of it was that the southeastern geopolitical zone is absolutely a centerpiece in terms of the commercial potential of our country being actualized. You cannot talk about commerce and trade at the highest level without including the southeastern geopolitical zone, which is why it was our administration that brought the second Niger Bridge, because we recognized that opening up key links between the southeastern geopolitical zone to the rest of the country is in the interest of the entire country, not just of the southeastern geopolitical zone. Even the local Oweto Bridge, which doesn't get much press, a 60 billion naira bridge that links Benue and Nasarawa, one of the major functions of that bridge that we're about to inaugurate within the next 2 months is that it cuts down travel time from the southeast to the middle belt by 5 hours, the provision of that major bridge that's constructed under this administration. So the point is, it is going to be at the core of His Excellency Asiwaju's Bola Tinubu's industrialization effort. He wants to ensure that we, really leverage on the innate industrial capacity of the Igbo people and really unleash that potential by not just opening up the land space and connecting it with the rest of the country by rail and by road and bridge and by air as well, but also by ensuring that we invest massively across sectors within that zone. For example, as I speak to you right now, we have massive exploratory activities going on under the NNPCL, exploring for new oil production opportunities in the Anambra Basin, for example. We believe that there is a large quantum of untapped oil there that we can tap for the benefit of not just the Southeast, but for the revenues of the entire Federation. That's one side of it. On the other side of it, obviously, Nigerians know that the coal reserves in the Southeast are massive. Lithium and many other items that we can extract for the betterment of that zone and for the betterment of the nation at large. This is what His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is promising. In addition to that, he wants to ensure that we establish technical and vocational centers of excellence across the Southeast to ensure and across the country, but with a particular focus on the Southeast, to ensure that our very talented brothers and sisters of Southeastern extraction are able to have that choice to say, look, if I don't want to go to the university, for example, I can actually go directly into trades and crafts and really gather, world-class skills to effectively compete with, international competitors in the area of whether it's leather production, in the area of shoemaking, and there's so many other areas where our people can compete, textiles, tailoring, and so many other areas where we know our people can compete. So this is really the crux of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu's message to the great people of the Southeast.
Now, quickly now, let's come back to another region which has to do with, security, talking about specifically Nigeria's northeast. Just recently, we saw President Buhari finally making that audacious campaign for your principal in the campaign, a race, talking about Asiwaju Tinubu. But for some, they thought that may have been because of the governorship candidate in Adamawa State, and that's the home state of the PDP presidential candidate. Now, what's the right story concerning the handing over of that party flag to these two individuals on the day by President Muhammadu Buhari?
Well, it's a practice of normalcy. That's tradition. We've never been a party that just hands over a flag to just the presidential candidate. We've always handed it over to the presidential nominee as well as the state governorship nominee. That's the culture of the party. It's what we've always done, and all of that. So that's nothing new. I think the tendency.
So now let me now bring in the second part, and the second part is based on what we've seen. There's been stories of the president not being open about whether he's in support of your candidate Bola Tinubu until the day. It would seem as that's the very first time you're getting to see the president coming out to publicly have a campaign for the presidential candidate of your party. Are we likely to see more of that from President Buhari? Is he likely to go all out, to go around the country and campaign for the candidate of his party?
Thank you very much, Sulaiman. I think this is where we have to distinguish between the narratives of the opposition, People's Democratic Party, and the reality on the ground. The opposition wants you to believe that President Muhammadu Buhari is somehow reluctant or hesitant to back our candidate. But it's often forgotten that in reality, in fact, before the campaigns even really started, from London, President Muhammadu Buhari told the international press that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is not just welcome as the candidate of the All Progressives Congress for the presidency, but that he was not only very proud of him, but that the party was lucky. That's his quotation. He said, "We are lucky as a party to have His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu as our candidate, not only because he's a popular governor of the populous Lagos state, but because of his developmental record in turning around Lagos state from what it was in 1999 to what it was when he left, and the line of succession that he put in place to get it to where it is today." So we're very proud of his record. The president's proud of his record. And I want to also correct the impression that it was only in Adamawa that Mr. President came out. That's not factual. In fact, early on in the campaign, you would recall that one of the first campaign stops, Mr. President was in, I believe, the first or second campaign stop. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was in Kano. It's almost like a warm-up rally, which was actually the first time he handed the flag over to His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. Now, to your question about being forward-looking, we've already released to the public a statement that clearly laid out all of the various stops where Mr. President is going to attend, which is about 10 stops or so, which is quite a lot for an incumbent president who's busy, finishing up on his legacy of infrastructural provision and social investment programs and all the things he's working on a day-to-day basis, to make time for 10 campaign stops across the entire country, across all the zones. He's going to be in Akwa Ibom. He's going to be obviously in Borno and some other stops. So there's a series of interventions that he's going to make, and he's obviously very happy to make them.
You know, one of the key things we'll be looking at today will be going back to opening the manifestos of key political parties as we prepare for this election in some weeks from today. And it's amazing that looking at the plethora of town hall meetings, we're yet to get something concrete about food security on manifestos from candidates. Take us through the Renewed Hope manifesto, specifically, if you can speak on food security by your candidate.
Thank you very much, Sulaiman. So this is one of the areas, like many others, that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is paying very special attention. First of all, you would recall that about one of the first town hall meetings we held as a campaign, and there's no other candidate in the presidential race that can boast of same, that one of the first town hall meetings we actually held was with farmers and food producers. And basically having a session with them from across the country. They came into a hall and had direct interface with our candidate for hours, asked him questions about his policy, not just asking him questions about his policy, but also giving him firsthand insight and feedback as to what they're facing, what President Muhammadu Buhari was able to do for them through the Anchor Borrowers program, but in addition, where there are still some lacunas, still some shortcomings that some gaps that still need to be filled. And so he was able to take note of that and obviously inculcate that into his policy document as well. Now, as to the specifics of what the plan of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is concerning food security, it's actually multidimensional. So let me be very clear about this very quickly. First of all, we are using the food security issue to be a platform on which we can employ millions of young rural Nigerians or rural youth. These are youths that may not have had the opportunity to go to secondary school or university or polytechnic, but are very physically able-bodied. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to deploy millions of rural youths across the country to engage them, to be engaged in a national mass land clearing exercise. And the essence of this is that right now in this country, only 35% of all arable land in this country is under cultivation, meaning that 2/3 of all arable land in this country is lying fallow and unproductive. So what we want to do is within the first term of his administration, by 2027, His Excellency Ajuri Tinubu is promising Nigerians that he will raise that percentage from 35% of arable land under cultivation to up to 65% of all arable land under cultivation through this national mass land clearing exercise. That's only step one. Step two is that we are going to now, have a kind of a cross-generational transition. Right now, we have a lot of older farmers, middle-aged farmers. We don't have enough youths that are actively engaged. We want to now have these rural young people who we've trained, who have been involved in the mass land clearing exercise, to now be equipped with not just seedlings, but mechanical instrumentation to be able to actually take up these farmlands across the country so that we don't just have the middle belt as a food basket or just the Northwest as a food basket, but that now the entire country can become a food basket. And so that's part one, that's part two. Then the third part is we're also going to be establishing commodity exchanges, ensuring that we set, basic minimum prices so that we don't have a situation like we've had in the past where government under President Buhari has given 1.2 trillion naira out to 3 million farmers through the Anchor Borrowers program. They take the assistance, produce these crops, right, produce these harvests, and then guess what? They now go over the border to Niger Republic and Benin Republic and others to now sell for, basically extra profits and all of that to the detriment of local food security. So what we want to do is we want to now set up these commodity boards so that we can set a basic minimum price, so that there's an assurance for our producers and farmers that that there's certain kind of ROI, a certain level of a profit that you're going to be able to secure for yourself, so that you can continue production without some of these other deleterious sharp practices. And then the last point I want to make very quickly is we're going to invest massively, assisting through counterpart funding the local governments to basically reconstruct rural feeder roads. These are roads that will link our farms to our markets, link our farms to our ports, link our industries to our ports, the processing plants to our ports, etc. Identify those strategic feeder roads for agricultural production and make sure that they're reconstructed, because we have two major challenges. One is because of poor transport infrastructure, you're losing some of your harvest, these post-harvest losses, because you're not getting them to the destination in time, to the market in time. That's one. And the second one is a shortfall in grain storage facilities and reserves, as well as refrigeration facilities. So we are going to be investing massively, not just directly as a government, but also incentivizing the private sector to invest massively in storage grain reserves and in mass refrigeration facilities across our major farming hubs across the country to ensure that we...
Okay, let's see if we can, let's quickly close on this, Ajuri. We're out of time. Let's quickly close on this now. The president has openly started campaigning for your candidate, and is your party likely to also get some further boost from some of those who ran with him at the primaries? Specifically, we yet to see some of, for instance, the vice president, former Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, and a few others join the campaign trail.
Oh, no, you see, this is again one of the things where we have to distinguish between the opposition narrative and the reality. What do I mean? In the case of His Excellency, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, it has been made very clear through an official statement that the president asked His Excellency, the Vice President, and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and other officials that are very busy with the day-to-day activities of the running government to be able to focus on governance as the president participates actively in the campaign. Remember that President Muhammadu Buhari is the chairman of the Presidential Campaign Council. So he's very focused on both governance and the politics of the campaign. So he has asked the vice president and other officials to focus on governance. Now, you've mentioned the former Minister of Transportation, Right Honorable Chibuike Rotimi Amechi. It's wrong to say that he has not been part of the campaign trail. In fact, the last campaign you cited in Adamawa, for example, His Excellency Chibuke Rotimi Amechi was physically present. He was there.
And that was more or less the first time. And some say perhaps it just dawned on him that he needed to join because he was losing out.
No. That is not the first time that he attended a campaign rally. It's just the most recent one. It is true that he has not been at some of the other ones, but you have to remember, he has his own life, he has his own engagements, and he has been appointed as a special advisor to the campaign on issues pertaining to transportation, for example. So he is an active part of the campaign. Just because he's not on television talking about the campaign, for example, does not mean that he's not giving advice behind the scenes, that he's not attending the campaign rallies. Nigerians know that he was present at some of these rallies. So I think that we should not force anybody to adhere to our own perception of what they should be doing in terms of their contribution to the campaign. These are high-level people who have worked very hard for this country, who are now in the kind of a retirement phase in some cases, and they deserve their privacy and their right to determine when and how they will participate, and we respect that for them.
Ajuri Ngelale, many thanks for speaking with us.